Hi everyone. I'm honored to be speaking this year at the Mosaic Crochet Summit. I'm Heather Noble, and I have over 30 years of crochet experience, with the last 7 years devoted exclusively to mosaic crochet. Since publishing my first pattern and starting my full-time design business in 2021, I've been focusing on expanding my own creative boundaries, developing an online community, and helping other people grow in their own crochet journeys. I've been married for 28 years and we have 3 wonderful sons, all of whom are on the autism spectrum. While many people my age are entering the empty nest season of life, our house remains full. We have challenging days and we have good days, and through it all, I have used crochet to help me come back to myself, find my creative side, and stay centered. In today's session, we'll learn how to elevate your mosaic crochet with the use of angle stitches. I'll walk you through why I use angle stitches in my designs, how I developed a notation system, a brief tutorial to show you some of the fundamentals of angle stitches, and some pro tips from my pattern testing team. Whether you're new to angle stitches or hoping to refine your technique, I'm excited to share some insights that I hope will inspire your own work. When I began designing mosaic overlay crochet patterns, I used the single crochet back loop only and double crochet front loop only stitches that are foundational to the technique. As I developed my design skills, I found myself gravitating towards large-scale image designs, particularly for blankets, rather than repeated geometric motifs, although I love those too. I wanted to find a way to make the images look more realistic and less pixelated, so I started incorporating angle stitches to achieve this. The mosaic crochet technique was introduced to the United States in 2003, so it's a relatively modern addition to the crochet world, when you compare it especially to older styles of crochet that have been around since the early 19th century. I found there was no standard notation system for charting angle stitches in mosaic crochet, so I developed my own. Drawing from guidelines set by the Craft Yarn Council, I created a comprehensive notation framework tailored specifically for angle stitches. This system includes a detailed stitch key, which includes photos, written descriptions, and video tutorial links for each of the angle stitches I use in my patterns. For those interested in exploring these techniques, the full stitch key is available to download on my website at heathernobledesigns.com. Here's an example of the same design with and without the use of angles. This first heart is a simple, clean design. There are no angles and it's entirely recognizable. It's a perfectly fine design. However, when we add angle stitches, the design is elevated. The lines are smoother and rounder. Adding the angle stitches makes the design more dynamic and refined. I offer this heart pattern as a free download in every one of my listings that includes angle stitches, to give my customers a chance to try out angle stitches for free before they make the decision whether or not to purchase a larger pattern. We don't have time for a full tutorial today, but let's take a look at this small area at the tip of the heart. Here's an example of information you'll find in my stitch key. First, you'll see a chart symbol. I use a slant symbol to notate an angle that is 1 stitch over. In this case, it's 1 stitch to the left. Next, you'll see the wording I use in my written patterns. In this case, angled DC1L stands for angled double crochet 1 to the left. The definition box gives you more details on how to work the stitch, followed by a picture of a chart with an arrow showing you where to place the stitch, a photo of an actual stitch, and finally a video tutorial link where I walk you step by step through how to make the specific stitch. For today's tutorial, we're going to look at 4 angle stitches. A slant to the left or right means to work the angle 1 stitch to the left or right, and an arrow left or right stands for an angle that's worked 2 over to the left or to the right. Let's take a closer look. So we're going to start with row 4. And in row 4 you see that we have a border stitch followed by 3 single crochets. And here's the area I want to talk about here. So this slant symbol is one that I use for angles that are 1 stitch over. So typically a double crochet will work directly below. So we would typically, so if it's a regular double crochet like this X, we would work directly below 2 rows into this loop here. This angled double crochet is not going to work directly below. It's going to work it's going to slant 1 stitch to the left. So you can see that instead of working into this loop here, it's going to work 1 to the left. So it will also work in the same loop as this double crochet. And this slant stitch, which I call angle DC1R, instead of working directly below, will slant 1 to the right. So instead of working in this stitch here, it will move over 1 to the right. So that means that all 3 of these stitches will work into the same loop. I made it pretty simple for this first example because I only gave you 1 loop to work into. But I need you to understand how these symbols work so that as you get into more advanced patterns, you can discern where to place your stitches. So this angle DC1L, instead of working directly below, will go 1 to the left. The double crochet will work directly below, and the angle DC1R will work 1 to the right. So I've crocheted up to that point. I always use stitch markers when I'm first teaching angles so that I can show where the stitches originate. So I call those places origin stitches. I put stitch markers in so we know not to work into the origin stitch, and also where to place the stitches around the angles. And I'm up to my first angled DC1L, so I'm going to put my stitch marker in that origin stitch. Then I have a regular double crochet from this next stitch, and then I have an angled DC1R following that, which is this next stitch. Here goes the stitch marker for that origin stitch. And then all 3 of these stitches will work into the same loop. So let's work them. First, an angled DC1L. So here's the stitch, 1 to the left, double crochet, then a double crochet, regular double crochet from this stitch, and now here's our origin stitch for the angle DC1R. So over 1 into the same loop. Now we have 3 single crochets following that angle, and we need to know where to put this first single crochet. So looking behind our angles we just made, we can see this was our last stitch, our origin stitch for that last angle. So our single crochet will work in the stitch next to it, right here. Like so. Okay, now we're at row 6. And you can see in row 6 we have a border stitch followed by a single crochet, and then let's look at these angles here. So you can see that I use an arrow symbol, and this indicates an angle stitch that's over 2 stitches. We use the slant for 1 stitch to the right or left and an arrow for 2 stitches over. So this arrow to the left, instead of working directly below into this loop, it will work 1, 2 to the left into this stitch we made previously, this angle stitch. And then we've seen the slant before, angle DC 1L, so instead of working here, it will slant over 1, also into the same stitch. And then of course the double crochet directly below. So all 3 of these stitches will work into the same loop here below, followed by a double crochet directly below. And then we have a grouping that's the opposite of what we did over here. So double crochet directly below, angled DC 1R, so not here but over 1, slanting, so that works into this stitch here, and then an arrow, which means angled DC 2R, so instead of working directly below, it'll be over 1, 2 into the same loop. So this angled DC 2L, drop 2 rows, 1, 2, works here. Angled DC 1L, down 2 rows, over 1, works here. Double crochet, of course, directly below, so all 3 of those into the same loop. This double crochet works directly below into that loop, and then double crochet, angled DC 1R, angled DC 2R. Let's take a look at it in the actual crochet and add our stitch markers. I've already crocheted my border stitch in the first single crochet, so I'm right to this angle here, angled DC 2L. Let's put a stitch marker in this origin stitch, and then we have an angled DC 1L next to it. Then we have 3 double crochets, 1, 2, 3. Then we have an angled DC 1R here, and an angled DC 2R right next to it. So this is where we start from. So first we have angle DC 2L from this origin stitch, so down 2 and over 1, 2, here's our loop. Then we have an angle DC 1L, so we've already done this origin stitch. Here we are for the next one. We know it works into the same loop. And then we have a DC, regular double crochet, into the same loop. All 3 of them have now worked into the same loop. Now we have a regular double crochet next to it. And then we have this grouping of 3 into the next loop. So double crochet, angled double crochet 1R, angled double crochet 2R. So here's where the double crochet 1R, 2R into this loop right here. Double crochet, angled DC 1R, same loop, angled DC 2R, followed by a single crochet. Now we need to see where to put that, so let's look behind. Here was our last origin stitch, the angled DC 2R. So the single crochet will work into this stitch right next to it, right here. If you've been crocheting for a while, you know that mastery doesn't happen overnight. Achieving uniform stitches and tension requires time, patience, and practice. The same principle applies to learning angle stitches. It's through repeated practice, careful counting, and strategic use of stitch markers that you'll truly see progress. Embrace the learning process and trust that with dedication your skills will steadily improve. Here's what some of my pattern testers have to say. Thank you for joining me for today's session. I hope you're feeling inspired to explore the possibility of angle stitches in your own work. We only had enough time to scratch the surface today, but I hope you'll take a look at my website and download the full stitch key along with the free heart pattern that we covered today. I'd love to continue the conversation and connect with you. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. All of those places are at Heather Noble Designs.